Welcome to the Week in Review, the show that brings you up to date on the week that was. Here are the top stories. BRICS nation agreed to push for trade in local currencies. RIL faces setback over KG-D6 development costs. And the World Bank's outgoing president makes a case for US leadership. First up, the Five-Nation Summit held in Delhi during the week has thrown up a proposal that could shake up global trade. Leaders of the so-called BRICS nation, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa got together on Thursday to discuss issues ranging from international financial institutions to US sanctions on Iran. But one significant proposal from the summit has to do with currencies. BRICS nations have signed an agreement that will allow trade between them to take place in local currencies. The caveat is that this could only happen through government-run development banks. The declaration says the move will reduce transaction costs between BRICS countries. Of course, if the proposal actually goes through and becomes a success, it could reduce demand for the US dollar and make BRICS nations less dependent on it. And speaking of trade, India's balance of payments isn't looking very healthy at the moment. Data released by the Reserve Bank on Friday show it has fallen into negative for the first time since the financial crisis of 2008. The deficit in the balance of payments for the third quarter was $12.8 billion. In the same period last year, India had a surplus of $4 billion. The Reserve Bank said a widening trade deficit and inadequate capital inflows ate into foreign exchange reserves. But that's not all. India's current account deficit has more than doubled compared to the year-ago period. For the December quarter, it stood at $19.6 billion. That's compared to just $9.7 billion during the same quarter in the previous fiscal. Moving to corporate news, Mukesh Ambani's Reliance Industries has suffered a setback in its standoff with the government over the KG-D6 gas field. Mint has learned that the government has decided not to participate in an arbitration to resolve a cost recovery dispute. That means RIL will either have to accept the government's line or go to the courts. RIL has claimed $1.24 billion in costs for developing the D6 field in the Bay of Bengal. The company had pushed for an arbitration process after indications that authorities plan to link the compensation amount with actual utilization. In other news, struggling carrier Kingfisher has drastically cut down its schedule of flights. On Tuesday, the airline announced its roster for the summer. Kingfisher plans to fly just 20 dedicated aircraft. That will mean 120 flights every day. Of course, Kingfisher says this is only temporary and that once it gets recapitalized, it will operate its entire fleet once again. In the meantime, it has told staff in areas not being covered to stay at home. Staying with corporate developments, Fortis Healthcare is moving towards a deal that will help cut its debt and bring it in line with regulatory norms. Mint has learned the company is planning to sell a stake of 15 to 20% to a private equity investor. It's in talk with both the Carlyle Group and TPG Capital India about a deal. The move comes about 6 months after the promoters Shivinder and Malvinder Singh sold the overseas hospital business back to Fortis Healthcare. Meanwhile, the Singh brothers also want to auction a 6.5% stake, bringing the public shareholding to the minimum 25% required by the June of 2013. And here are some stories in brief. The government has announced its borrowing target for 2012-13. It will raise 3.7 trillion rupees in the 6 months to September. That amounts to 65% of the fiscal's borrowing target of 5.7 trillion. This comes even as the banking system has a shortfall of about 2 trillion rupees. India's biggest potential foreign investment, the $12 billion POSCO Steel project, has suffered another setback. On Friday, the National Green Tribunal suspended its environmental license. The decision comes just days after Prime Minister Manmohan Singh told South Korean businessmen that India was a stable investment destination. And finally, the World Bank's outgoing president Robert Zoellick has made the case for the US to lead some major financial institutions. Speaking to reporters in Delhi on Friday, he said the US did not traditionally head other institutions like the WTO or IMF. Zoellick's comments came a day after the BRICS leaders called for a merit-based selection in both the World Bank and IMF. And that's all we have for you. Thanks for watching.